Hello everyone and welcome to today's press conference. Thank you very much for coming, both those here in the room with us today and those of you who are online as well. My name is Millie Haslam and I'll be moderating today's conference. As you know, science and international cooperation need to be at the heart of all kind of political decision making for the ocean, and that's very much the mission of us here at the One Ocean Science Congress. Over the last few days here at the Congress, we've heard from a varied range of voices from around the world about the opportunities and challenges in regarding protecting and restoring the ocean globally. And today we're going to hear from two of the Congress's co-chairs who've been working very closely with an international scientific committee to develop a range of recommendations which will be presented at the UN Ocean Conference next week. It's very much about distilling the scientific evidence and the knowledge that we have to define a way forward for global policy action for the ocean. We are joined here today by two of the co-chairs of the Congress. We're joined by François Huillier, CEO of Ifremer, the only institution in France dedicated solely to ocean research. And we're joined by Jean-Pierre Gattuso, Director of Research at CNRS, which is the French National Research Centre. We're also joined by three of the Congress's ambassadors. So today we're here with Alejandra Villalobos Madrigal. She's Executive Director of Friends of the Cocos Islands and a specialist in marine conservation and coastal communities. We're also joined by Olivier Rollinger, a Michelin star chef based here in France, who's highly passionate and an advocate for the sustainable and equitable fishing, as well as improving practices within the fine dining and hospitality sectors. And we're finally joined by Boris Herman, a sailor who has circumnavigated the globe several times. His racing team, Team Militia, are collecting data from on board their racing yacht to advance ocean and climate research. Today's session, we will hear firstly from the co-chairs who will talk us through their 10 recommendations for policymakers at UNOC. And then we will also hear the perspectives of our three ambassadors who will talk through the real-world impact and implication of these recommendations and the impact on communities. For those of us here in the room, you should have received a press release and an infographic when you arrived, but everyone will also receive further documentation and further details of the 10 recommendations following this session by email. And we will also, following this session, have 30 minutes reserved for questions. So please do, if you do have any questions, please hold on to them to after the presentations, and there'll be an opportunity for you to ask them then. So without further ado, I will pass on to Jean-Pierre and François to take the floor and talk us through their recommendations from the Congress.
So thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. Indeed, we are, with Jean-Pierre, going to present you the 10 recommendations that we have prepared with the International Scientific Committee that has been assembled, and this is an 18-member International Scientific Committee. These recommendations are based on the available science as well as on the summaries of the oral communications and posters that are being delivered these days at the Congress. And some will be updated according to what is going on these days. So I think we will move to these 10 recommendations one by one, if I'm right. This is the way we plan to do it, and I will start with the first one. I should say first, regarding these recommendations, I forgot to say that when the former slide was there, is that we organized the Congress according to 10 topics, and these 10 topics are those which are fueling or feeding or inspiring the topics that will be discussed during the UNOC 3. So the 10 topics we chose are hot topics of international conversations, intergovernmental negotiations, and different treaties or negotiations that are ongoing. The first recommendation we would like to insist on is about inspiring responsibility and respect for the ocean and integrating across knowledge system. So on the slide, you probably have the 8 points, but I would like to insist on a few of them. One of the things that we discussed with the International Scientific Committee is that there was a strong need to move from an extractive relationship with the ocean into a relationship where we focus on responsibility, respect, and reverence. These are words, but this means something. So try to avoid the extractive relationship that we have been having for over last years or last decades or centuries. The second point I would like to insist on is on the inclusion of different knowledge systems. Of course, we are scientists. Of course, science is the core of our mission, and we're deeply attached to the facts. But we also feel that there is a value in different other knowledge systems, including those which are shared by indigenous peoples and local communities. And maybe the last one, if I should insist on one, is 1.8. It's the empowerment of the people through ocean literacy. We feel that there is that the governments, the states, should really support the development of ocean literacy, so that the people, not only those who live near to the sea, but also those who are far from the sea, know more about the ocean and the benefits associated to the ocean. Jean-Pierre?
The second recommendation has to do with climate and enable effective, equitable, and environmentally safe ocean-based approaches to achieve the objectives of mitigation and adaptation of the Paris Agreement. Obviously, this is one that is connected to the United Nations framework on climate change, Convention on Climate Change. And also, obviously, the first recommendation is to decrease greenhouse gas emission. This is the crux of the matter as it pertains to ocean warming, ocean acidification, and the sea level rise. And to do that and to go towards net zero emissions, the ocean is a good solution. I mean, the ocean has a lot to provide in terms of renewable energy, wind energy, energy from waves, thermal energy, the gradient of temperature between the surface and the deep ocean. So tapping on those energy sources from the ocean also can contribute to go towards net zero. There is a very hot topic at this time. It's removing CO2 from the atmosphere, and all eyes are turning into the ocean because it's very difficult to do from the land. And this is what we call CDR, carbon dioxide removal, MCDR when it's in the ocean. And it is a hot topic because there is an urgency to decrease the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. And the IPCC has shown that the climate action is not good enough to reach the Paris Agreement, the goals of the Paris Agreement. One needs to remove this CO2. And the ocean can help for that. There are approaches that are being investigated, but we want to promote the precautionary principle. There is a lot of uncertainty with those in terms of efficiency, etc. So we can discuss that during the question time, but this is a topic that is inevitable, unfortunately, but needs to be taken with a lot of caution. I think I will leave it at this for this. I don't want to be too long. We said 2 minutes per recommendation. Maybe we go to the next one.
Okay, so I'm going to continue on the third recommendation. The third one is about the biodiversity, marine biodiversity, and the protection of that. Here, of course, the first recommendation is about the ratification of this BBNG agreement that was signed in 2023. I think we are less than 30 countries which have ratified up to now. The level that is needed for the entry into force of BBNG agreement is 60. So there has been a sort of push recently towards the ratification, but it has not been enough so that it would be ratified by now. So we feel that definitely a strong recommendation by the Congress is that this treaty should be ratified as soon as possible. The second recommendation here is not a surprise, is that there is a strong need to establish climate-smart and area-based management of marine ecosystem. It means that we should allocate at least 30% of marine areas to adaptive marine protected areas. And so this is a goal that has been already stated, but we are still far from it. And so the scientific community definitely feels that this is an engagement that the countries have to enforce. We also feel that they have not only to define these 30%, but also to enforce the rules that are associated to that. As a scientific community, we also feel that it is important that we expand observation and monitoring of biodiversity. If you look to the present monitoring system that exists for the ocean, most of them lack biological information. We are mainly monitoring and observing the physics of the ocean, but not that much the biology of it. So this is something important. You will see later that there is a recommendation towards the reduction of plastic pollution, but we also have here specifically a recommendation about the other types of pollutions. You know the PFAS or all types of pollution that come to the ocean have to be reduced, and this is one of the major threats on ocean health. And I will pass the word to Alejandra for maybe a small comment on this.
Bonjour, morning, and buenos dias. I would like to talk to complement the big important proposal. So do you remember that it's necessary to connect the science, its findings and recommendations with robust public policies? We need to create innovative solutions. So and it's important, let's not forget the science changes and transform, but the ultimate objective is to keep the planet spinning in the balance. In this Congress is a big opportunity that included all ideas, this proposal, before the conference. Do you know that the ocean is the main resource of the planet? So the humans depend this ecosystem, and we need to protect and conserve that blue marine resource. It's important to say, for example, when this proposal does include the different sectors, governments, the decision makers, communities, scientists, and other knowledge communities that they have a lot of information on the ocean. So it's important to see that how proposal is include different actors, different ideas. So it's important to say that, do you remember the ocean is the ecosystem that connects us, but it covers the 3/4 of the planet. Our planet Earth is a sort of life, of a common, the best legacy for future generations. Keep the balance is the biggest natural resource of the planet. The ocean is, and protect and conserve is very difficult. So it's important to promote, to respect the world, science world, to include this proposal in different conferences. The information is the table. we need to act now. Is the moment. You continue.
Thank you, Alejandra. And we're going to pass, I think, back to Jean-Pierre for the
Yes.
next piece. And can I also just remind all speakers to turn off their microphones when they're not speaking?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the fourth recommendation has to do with the deep ocean. And the recommendation is to pause harmful activities in the deep ocean. Because the deep ocean is vastly unknown. There is approximately 0.001% of the surface of the deep ocean that has been visually monitored by humans. The knowledge is extremely poor. It's a source of a potential source of proteins for fishing. It's a potential source of minerals, deep sea mining. So the recommendation is to pause those activities until knowledge has been improved. And also with regard to the storage of carbon, because some approaches that are looked at to store carbon is to store the carbon in a deep ocean. And this is also can have implications for fishing, for the fish and for all marine life. The deep ocean is quite diverse, more diverse than everyone thinks. And so there is a key need to govern the ocean, and the BBNJ treaty that has been signed but not yet ratified is a key instrument for implementing and for protecting and understanding the deep ocean. So those harmful activities must be paused at this time.
Coming to marine genetic resources. So marine genetic resources are one type of biodiversity that you find in the ocean. To put it simply, you have plenty of such resources in, for example, microalgae, plankton. There are also plenty of such resources potentially in the deep ocean that was just mentioned by Jean-Pierre. Bacteria, for example, where you can find new molecules for health, for medicine, and for plenty of things. And so there is a big challenge of the way we are going to explore these marine genetic resources. Big challenge also about the way we are going to equitably share the benefits that are derived from these marine genetic resources. So here we insist on 5 points. One is to improve the legal frameworks that do already exist, but that are not fully implemented on the side and fully complete on the other side. Second is to include the non-monetary benefits that are associated to these sharing frameworks. The third is that, and this is very important for scientists, is to establish open databases on marine genetic resources. On the oral communications that I heard these days, there was a strong insistence not only on marine genetic resources, but that we should apply what is called the FAIR principles. I mean, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable databases. The fourth thing is to foster the capacity sharing and technology transfer across the countries. And the fifth, which is related to the fourth, is about the strengthening of international cooperation. The risk that we do have is that there are countries which are much more developed economically speaking, which have the technology and which have the capability to use in the best way these resources, whereas other countries are not able to use them. And most of these genetic resources are in the high sea in an area that is a common good, so that is not appropriated by a given country.
The sixth recommendation has to do with fishing. Fishing, obviously, overfishing is a huge problem, and the first recommendation there is to improve the detection of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. There are technologies that allow to follow the boats and fishing boats and make sure that they fish without hiding their identity, and that is a big problem, and this can be improved, the detection, deterrence, and enforcement. One needs also to support compliance and law enforcement throughout supply chains. We need to understand the cause of overfishing, and one of the causes, of course, is the human preference for fish or for certain kinds of fish. So this can also be used to help decrease overfishing. There is also a strong component of human rights. There are many fishing boats where human rights are not respected. There is slavery, there is exploitation of humans, and mostly in the IUU fishing practices, and that has to stop and needs to be enforced, the international regulations. One needs to eliminate harmful subsidies. There are many nations, including close to us, that are subsidizing the fishing industry, and which leads to a too large a number of boats. And in fact, just before this press conference in the main room, there was a keynote speaker. She explained, Yun Shin, that the fishing effort has been multiplied by 7 since 1950, whereas the fish collected is flat. There is no increase in the amount of fish that is available for food, really showing the disconnect between the fishing fleet, the size of the fishing fleet, and most of it is subsidized. And of course, then improve transparency in agreements. There are many regional or binational fishing agreements that are far from being transparent, and transparency must be included for equity as well. I'll leave it to François.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre. So in line with what Jean-Pierre just said about illegal fishing and unreported and unregulated fishing, the seventh set of recommendations is about the sustainability, equitability, and safety of ocean-based food systems. And I will leave the floor in just a second to Olivier Rollinger. Here, the 5 points are first to promote sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. These are simple words, but you have to have in mind that at this stage, most of the fisheries management is based on maximum sustainable yield, species by species, region by region. This is not ecosystem-based management. So the scientists know how to do it, or we have a lot of clues to do that, but still it is not being applied, and there is a move that is definitely needed here if we want to really have a sustainable fisheries. Same would apply to aquaculture. The second one is about supporting small-scale actors. Then there is an issue about increasing the equitability and the transgenerational access to ocean-based foods. I would like to insist on the two last, the integration of ocean-based foods into broader food policies. Maybe this is a French perspective, but when you think to food security in France, we very much often, we often forget the food that comes from the sea. We are mainly, and I know it because I was involved in agricultural sciences before, we mainly focus on continental food, and we forget the food that comes from the sea. And I think this has to be fully integrated, this food, into food policies. And the last point, which is really important, and with that I will leave the floor to Olivier, is to value the nutritional benefits of seafood and ensure safety. There are two things here. The seafood can be qualitatively very good for the health of the people, but simultaneously there are some pollutions which I already mentioned earlier, which can affect the safety of that food for the consumers. Olivier, would you like to add a few words in French?
Bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous. Merci. Bon, pour beaucoup, cela va vous sembler un peu étonnant d'avoir un cuisinier au milieu de tous ces chercheurs. Je suis un peu comme les navigateurs. Mais en fait, me semble si François et l'Ifremer m'a demandé d'être parmi vous, c'est peut-être parce que nous faisons la même chose ou nous tentons de faire la même chose. Vous, les journalistes. Les scientifiques travaillent, font un travail remarquable et apportent des recommandations. Et les premières personnes qu'elles ils adressent ces recommandations sont évidemment les politiques et les décideurs. Manifestement, ils ne sont pas toujours entendus et certains préfèrent toujours s'intéresser au football avant la science. Et là, je pense qu'il faudrait, et alors avec beaucoup d'humilité, moi je ne vous parle pas en tant que chef 3 étoiles ou ayant été vice-président à l'international des Relais des Châteaux, représentant les 550 meilleurs chefs dans le monde, je vous parle comme le cuisinier, mais comme un papa, comme une maman, comme le petit restaurant du quartier, comme la cantine scolaire, comme la cantine de l'EHPAD. Mais toutes celles et tous ceux qui nourrissent ont besoin de 2 garde-manger, la terre et l'océan. Ce garde-manger qu'est l'océan, c'est le 2e garde-manger de l'humanité. Il est en danger, et ce n'est pas le cuisinier qui le dit, ce n'est pas un politique qui le dit, c'est la science qui le dit. Comment nous pouvons sensibiliser l'ensemble des mangeuses et des mangeurs pour consommer, si je puis dire, ce vilain mot consommer, mais se nourrir du vivant de l'océan. Et là, nous avons évidemment besoin du savoir des scientifiques pour comprendre et pour apporter des critères de durabilité sur ce qu'est un poisson durable, un coquillage durable, un crustacé durable, une algue durable. Et avec, je parraine depuis 15 ans une ONG qui s'appelle Éthique Océan, avec un concours qui porte mon nom au niveau de toute l'Europe et au niveau du Japon, bientôt en Chine. Et on essaye de sensibiliser l'ensemble de ces jeunes qui sont en formation ou de jeunes professionnels pour comment manger l'océan d'une manière durable. Alors évidemment, je ne vais pas vous poser à un d'entre vous quels sont les 3 critères de durabilité d'un produit de la mer. J'aime pas beaucoup le mot produit, mais quand même vous les rappeler. 1, et c'est pas moi encore qui le dis, c'est grâce à la science, à tous ces scientifiques d'Europe, du monde entier. Premier critère, connaître le véritable nom de l'espèce de poisson souhaitée, avec le lieu de pêche dans lequel il est souhaité, et de savoir si la population, et je ne parle pas de stock comme de stock de boîtes de conserve, je parle de la population d'animaux vivants est suffisante pour être encore prélevée dans l'océan. Ça, c'est le premier critère. Le deuxième critère, c'est la technique de pêche. Est-ce une technique de pêche passive ou au contraire impactante, agressive vis-à-vis de l'écosystème? Et enfin, le troisième critère, c'est évidemment la taille. On en a parlé encore ce matin tout à l'heure dans la salle numéro 1, mais la taille du poisson, évidemment, pour que le poisson ait pu atteindre sa maturité sexuelle. Voilà les 3 grands critères. Donc, voilà, très modestement, moi, mon rôle, c'est d'essayer de faire comprendre à l'ensemble des professionnels, mais au-delà, parce que alors je ne connais pas les chiffres au niveau mondial, mais en tous les cas, au niveau de la France, on est à plus de 60% des produits de la mer consommés hors foyer. Ce qui veut bien dire que les cuisiniers, les cuisinières professionnelles sont les premiers prescripteurs. Et à ce titre, nous avons un véritable rôle pédagogique de sensibiliser l'ensemble de l'opinion. Donc vous voyez, en fait, la caisse de résonance, vous êtes là pour être la caisse de résonance. D'une autre manière, la société civile essaye de l'être, puisque les décideurs et les politiques veulent trop souvent ne pas les entendre. Et je dis bien, c'est surtout pour sensibiliser l'ensemble de la filière, des pêcheurs, aux marailleurs, aux poissonniers. Et la mer, ce n'est pas simplement lorsque l'on va à la plage en vacances, qu'on a la chance d'aller en vacances à la plage, ni simplement, mais c'est aussi ce qui se passe devant l'étal du poissonnier. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Olivier, and thank you very much for that very passionate speech around what we can do as individuals collectively, but also the role of chefs in kind of addressing some of the challenges that we have with overconsumption in the sea. And for those of you who don't speak French, we will be providing a translation of Olivier's comments after the session. And I'll pass on to Jean-Pierre to take on the next recommendation.
Yes, and before I do that, don't worry about the bang. It's every day at 12, there is a bang from the hill behind us. We are perfectly safe. So this eighth recommendation has to do with plastic pollution. As you know, I would say with climate change, this is an environmental pressure that is extremely worrying. And the way to end marine plastic pollution mostly has to be involved on land, because plastic comes from land, from rivers, or from garbage that is deposited on the coastline. So the problem is there, but there is a need to study the life cycle. That is, recycling, of course, is very important. Limiting the use of plastic when it is not needed. For example, package every fruit under a plastic wrap. There is also a need to investigate in technologies that go away from plastic, which, on top of its very negative impact on the ocean, also is using fossil fuel. The plastic is the manufacturing of plastic is releasing CO2 in the atmosphere. So getting away from that, and there are technologies that are available. And there are even companies looking at making plastic from seaweeds, from algae, marine algae. I have seen flip-flops being built from plastic derived from seaweed. There is a need to decrease the threat to big animals, to whales, dolphins, sea turtles from large plastic. And there is a need there to enforce the prohibition of delivering from ships garbage into the ocean. I would say that in European waters and maybe other areas it's enforced, but not globally. There is a need to develop standards for plastic monitoring, and it might seem strange, but there is no standard at this time. There are attempts to detect plastic pollution from space, but that's a very difficult task. And really, the task of monitoring plastic is not very valuable. We need to stop polluting with plastic. And I should end by saying that recovering plastic from the sea, it's extremely difficult. And in fact, it has also negative impacts, because you need to use nets. And by using nets, you remove zooplankton or phytoplankton that are essential to the food chain. So it's better to deal with the problem before the plastic comes to the sea. Thank you.
Then the ninth set of recommendations is about the decarbonization of shipping, but more generally about the reduction of the environmental impact of maritime transport. For those who were present, we heard from Senator Kerry, the former Secretary of State, who addressed the Congress this morning, that maritime shipping is, of course, not the main source of carbon emissions, but still, it's about 3% of carbon emissions. And so there is a need to improve that. There is also a need to improve the other types of the other aspects of environmental footprint. For example, thinking to noise, which is something which becomes more and more important in the scientific community. So here what we advocate for is that first we should continue to develop alternative fuels, propulsion technologies and systems, and maybe Boris will tell a few things about that. The second thing is more in the field of social sciences and political sciences. It's about strengthening international regulations. The things do not only happen at sea, they also happen at land. We have to improve the port facilities. Electrification of port is something that is key for reducing the emissions. The fourth is at sea. We have to better identify, characterize, and protect those areas which are particularly sensitive because, for example, they are important for marine life, and here noise pollutions or ship strikes may have strong impact on marine life. So these areas have to be defined so that they are better protected. And the last thing is, again, for the scientific community itself, we should be respect exemplarity, and so we have to also reduce the carbon footprint and the environmental footprint of the oceanographic fleets. Next week we will have, I think it's on the 11th or on the 10th, we will launch a manifesto of oceanographic fleets towards the reduction of their environmental footprint. But Boris, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, thank you very much. Very honored to be among you today as an ambassador of the One Ocean Science Congress. As a sailor, a racing sailor, I've done 2 Vendée Globe races and 6 races around the world in total. Over the last 20 years, I've spent most of my life on the ocean, so it's really my workplace and my home, and we have seen changing the ocean and witnessed kind of climate change on a global scale, and we have, of course, a natural connection also to the industry of shipping because it's our common environment, and we are also supported by the shipping industry in our sport and in connection. And some of the principles that apply to our sport, curiosity and ambition, I would think they apply to all of these recommendations. It is, I think we are in a race against time to find the best solution, but I don't want to stress so much this kind of pressure element, but more the element of curiosity, the competition for the best solutions in all of these areas of the 10 recommendations. I think that is really an important mindset that we can take over from my world of the professional racing industry or racing circuit. We need to find these enhancements to better use the power of nature to make our sailing boats go faster, and with only the power of nature go around the planet faster than the wind and faster than ever and ever faster without leaving any trace on the ocean. And of course, the shipping industry, we just learned 3% of emissions today, but the shipping industry is growing, projected to grow like our whole economy, and probably even a bit over proportionally growing. So this 3% could be a larger portion in the next couple of years if shipping industry cannot address decarbonization topics quickly and urgently. Of course, shipping is way too cheap, I think. We really need to incorporate the real environmental cost of all our industries, of fish, of products, but also the product of shipping is very, very cheap. We really don't consider it in our daily lives, but our entire global economy is based on shipping. Without that, we wouldn't have any globalization. And we have many benefits from shipping and from globalization. Even environmental benefits sometimes, because certain products just naturally grow, or certain resources we get from certain regions with less environmental impact than other regions. So I don't want to sing in the song of bashing globalization and bashing shipping, but we need, of course, shipping to decarbonize. And we have a rare opportunity in this sector of an international global regulatory framework with the IMO, which is very rare to unite an entire industry in a legally binding system. If the IMO decides a carbon tax for shipping even asks for that. Leaders of the shipping companies ask for a carbon tax, a high carbon tax. So sometimes industry is even moving faster than politics, and of course there are lots of hurdles, but I think ultimately we really need regulation in many industries, and shipping is a great example for that. With the IMO, there's a great opportunity to really help and put these industries in place to increase the cost and to invest to green and decarbonize. How can it be done? Oh, today there's a lot of chatter and talk about future fuels and green fuels, ammonia, methanol, and there's also the possibility of carbon capture on the ships. There's the possibility to do hybrid propulsion with wind assistance, but all these solutions are costly and are not easy, and it's not going to be that quick. Another regulatory aid and framework could be to slow down shipping because the emissions are over proportional to the speed of the boats. So we have been engaged ourselves in the last couple of years to help promote hybrid propulsion, so automated telescopic sails that you can today also put on 300-meter long container vessels. And that can help save 10, 15, maybe sometimes 20% emissions of fuel cost. And if we think about green fuels in the future, which will be much more expensive, this can be a business case for shipping. This is just in the beginning now, but there are already ships out. So if you don't know how this looks, then you can look up the Canopy, the famous Canopy vessel of the ESA, transporting the Ariane rocket to the other side of the Atlantic with wind propulsion. So these things are perfect examples for the ideas we need in every sector to help progressing towards all of these recommendations. Thank you.
Jean-Pierre,
Yes.
for the final recommendation.
The last recommendation is the one that is the largest, and it's also the one that has attracted the most abstracts, one of those having attracted the most abstracts. So I will go in the interest of time. Unfortunately, I will have to go a little faster. The first one, of course, is having transdisciplinary knowledge. It has been mentioned by François for recommendation 1, but it is essential to combine the knowledge, the scientific knowledge, together with local and indigenous knowledge. All of them are important. For example, for marine protected areas, what we call marine protected areas has been known for many, many decades in French Polynesia and elsewhere. That's the system of Raoui that protects coral reefs in several islands. Strengthen innovation research, enhance research infrastructure. Research infrastructure, of course, it's costly to study the ocean. Ships are needed, satellites also, and instruments that are autonomous and that go up and down in the water column. That's important, but it is essential for monitoring, modeling, and building what we call digital twins of the ocean. That's modeling the ocean in order to have predictive capabilities of the future ocean. Maintaining large-scale observations, that is a big challenge because one of the major programs at this time, the Argo program, the floats are mostly maintained by the US, and with the situation in the US, there is a fear that this monitoring by the Argo program could decline. And we have one of the deliverables that you will have access to is a paper that we have published earlier this week on this very topic of observations and the US issues. And finally, we have not very much looked at sustainable regenerative blue economy because, as you know, there is another special event starting tomorrow, or is it tomorrow, in Monaco, the BEF, the Blue Economy and Finance Forum, which is looking very much out of that, but clearly there is a strong link between the blue economy and ocean science. They feed together and finally increase the research budgets. There is a number that is very striking. Ocean science at the national level, on average, receives 1.7% of the research budgets of the countries, on average. It goes from 0.3 to 11, but this is a very, very small amount when you consider that the ocean covers 70% of the ocean, 1.7% of the research budgets. And scientists have estimated also that there is a shortfall of 149 billion US dollars a year for reaching the objectives of SDG 14, the Sustainable Development Goal 14. So clearly there is a huge need to finance better ocean science and also ocean knowledge through indigenous and local knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre. And I'm very conscious that time is running away with us a little, so we'll try to keep things brief and moving on now to the question and answers session. There are a few microphones in the audience, so please put your hand up if you have a question for either the co-chairs or the ambassadors, and we'll work through them as quickly as we can. As we're passing out the microphones, I just wanted to pass to the co-chairs very quickly to fill us in on the wider deliverables outside of the recommendations for the Congress.
Yes, sir. Regarding the deliverables of the Congress, there are several. So the recommendations that we commented, plus one specific recommendation regarding the protection of the coral reefs, because you know they are in danger. This first set of recommendations plus the coral reefs. Then we have prepared a policy brief that is being published today by Europe Jacques Delors, a think tank which is based in Brussels, and IDRI, which is the Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relationships, which is linked to Sciences Po in Paris. This policy brief is very much about the role of science in intergovernmental and multilateral policies. Third, we have published last week a short paper, a correspondence in Nature, Ecology and Evolution about the adaptation of our policies in the context of the America's decreasing support to science. And fifth or fourth, I don't remember the name. So we are issuing today a manifesto that has to be signed physically or digitally by the members of or the participants to the Congress. And this maybe the main sentence of the manifesto, if you want to read it, Jean-Pierre. I think this is good that.
Yes, we didn't say that initially, but we have been asked to organize this scientific congress to feed UNOC next week. And so this manifesto is targeting in this goal, and this sentence is, let the third United Nations Ocean Conference be the conference that make the difference. So we hope to cover to convince the heads of state and government of the need to follow those recommendations that we have mentioned, and we will deliver those recommendations to the heads of state and government on Sunday at 5:30. This, if you want to have a look, there is this manifesto is outside room 1, and it was under a black tarp, and the tarp has been removed, and the participants of the Congress have been invited to sign it, but physically, but most importantly, electronically.
And just to clarify, all of these documents will be made available digitally after the conference today as well.
Finally, we can say a few words on the authorship. You see that all the material we have produced was mostly produced by the International Scientific Committee, 18 people, and we are very grateful to them. And those recommendations will be completed by Sunday by the outcomes of the sessions that have taken place at this meeting, and also the roundtables. We have asked the chairs and moderators to provide us with the outcomes of their session or roundtable, and this will be synthesized and added to the recommendations of the International Scientific Committee.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre. So now we'll pass over to the audience. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask today's speakers? Please raise your hand.
Hello, I'm Guéric Poncet from the French newspaper Le Point. Are you optimistic that your voices will be heard as scientists?
I don't know whether we have to be optimistic, but we have to be. We are determined. We are. I think there is a. What we are going. What this manifesto is a call for action. What we heard from the former U.S. Secretary of State this morning is a call for action. Clearly, this is what John Kerry said. So we are calling for it. Whether it will immediately be transformed into public policies, we don't know. But I think this is our responsibility to clearly tell what we know. If you look to the manifesto, what we say basically is that the first item after the sentence that Jean-Pierre read is that act now where science is clear. And there are plenty of areas where science is clear when it comes to marine protected areas, when it comes to phasing out fossil fuel use, when it comes to the protection of 30% of the ocean. Well, there are plenty of areas where the things are clearly, the science is strong. The second thing is there are areas where science is not well established. Just consider what Jean-Pierre said about marine carbon dioxide removal. There is some potential here. There are also some risks. And here we say, please, let us continue to do research before taking decisions that could be harmful. So there are areas where there is a need not to take the decisions too quickly and not to damage inadvertently the ocean. And so here, and the same for deep sea mining, for example. So the second, we say act now where science is clear, but advance knowledge before irreversible harmful decisions could be made. So I think these are strong messages that we can convey, and this is our responsibility to do it. Then this will be their responsibility to I know that taking decisions and making action is complicated, but this will be theirs.
Thank you, Francois. Do we have any other questions from those in the room? Yes. Teresa at the front.
Thank you, Teresa from Inside Climate News. And I was just wondering if you can talk about the coral reef recommendation a little bit more.
Yes, as you know, coral reefs for the past 20 years have been subject to mass coral bleaching and often to mass mortality following that. And that is due to extreme temperatures. As we speak, this is the fourth global coral bleaching event. And really, this is the first marine ecosystem, and perhaps the first ecosystem on land too, that is potentially subject to disappearance. I mean, the fact that coral reefs are repeatedly hit by marine heat waves doesn't give them the time they don't have the resilience fast enough to recover from that. And when it is repeated as is, it's absolutely dramatic. Why? Because coral reefs are essential in where they are, in the tropics. They protect the land from erosion, from storms and cyclones. They also are essential to maintain biodiversity. Coral reefs are the most diverse ecosystem in the ocean. Also a source of food, because many fish and many local populations fish on the coral reefs. And many fish go back from coral reefs. They reproduce here, and then they go to the open ocean, and they are available for fishing. So, I mean, protecting coral reefs seems from bleaching is absolutely essential. And unfortunately, the only way to do that is to reduce emissions. That's the only tool that is proven to decrease the mortality of corals. Of course, the restoration is possible in certain cases, but there are even restoring operations that have been stopped because the juveniles that were being grown to refeed the reef and to restore a reef themselves have been killed by excess temperature. So really that is a big concern, and there is absolutely a need to do better with climate action. As John Kerry said earlier today, we can win the fight. And we must continue to push to win this fight also for coral reefs.
Thank you. Just to clarify, but that you are going to submit an official recommendation
Yes.
to UNOC, and will that be available?
It will be
Okay.
available
Great.
in the folder that will be given to you.
Thank you.
We have a few questions at the back.
Thank you. Terry from international media based in Norway. I wanted to ask you regarding recommendation number 4, seabed, and the second part, expand deep sea knowledge for sustainability. What do you mean by sustainability here? It sounds very generic. What kind of sustainability?
Sustainability for fishing, sustainability also of the carbon store. The sediments in the deep ocean store a lot of carbon, and those operations that could be performed in the deep ocean can release this carbon back in the upper layer of the ocean, and then CO2 coming back. It could be an additional source of CO2. Also for protecting the fish populations, if we want to maintain sustainability there. The fish in the deep ocean reproduces very, very slowly. So it has to have a governance for fishing to ensure that there is not the population is wiped out and then disappears because there is no fish with maturity to reproduce. So that is what we mean by sustainability.
So basically sustainable use of the
deep ocean. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The man
Bonjour, Ewen Chardonnay, journaliste indépendant. Je travaille sur la question des algues. Je voulais savoir s'il y avait des recommandations sur l'aquaculture des algues, ou ce qui est fait, ou ce qui pourrait être fait dans ce domaine. Et puis peut-être pour M. Rollinger, peut-être comment on peut voir plus d'algues sur nos tables.
Yes, we don't really have a recommendation on algae. Obviously, it is a wonderful source of food, and when we see in Southeast Asia the booming of algal aquaculture, that is tremendously useful for many reasons. The first one is that it is, of course, food that is produced. Secondly, that products can be made out of those algae. Algae also store carbon, so it could help in the fight or to maintain CO2 or to decrease CO2 in the atmosphere. But we need to be cautious because the algae need to be stored in a way that they are not oxidized again by bacteria and released as CO2. If we want to use algae to store carbon, the carbon must be locked in some ways. We could expand on that, but there is no need. And as to the question about the use of food for the food, I mean, that's the cook.
Pardon, en français, je vais vous répondre, mais évidemment, il y a un champ des possibles extraordinaire. Pardon, au niveau des propriétés organoleptiques des algues, qui sont très diverses. Il n'y a pas une algue, mais évidemment des algues, et des goûts, des saveurs et des textures. Donc, pourquoi ne pas regarder dans cette autre partie du garde-manger qu'est l'océan, en particulier en Occident, où on a toujours considéré le mot algue comme étant très péjoratif. On parle des algues tueuses, on parle des algues vertes sur mon rivage breton, on parle c'est toujours quelque chose de négatif. Alors il y a aussi un autre côté négatif, c'est ces fameux sushis avec ces vilains thons et ces vilains saumons. Mais en tous les cas, les sushis ont apporté en Occident le début de l'appropriation du goût des algues. Et aujourd'hui, on peut en particulier faire des bouillons et on peut faire des sauces et on peut faire des saveurs exceptionnelles, évidemment, avec les algues. Donc je pense qu'il faut aller voir justement ce que nos amis en Asie du Sud-Est ont pu produire. Et aujourd'hui, et puis se rappeler que l'algue a un impact sur l'écosystème bien moindre que d'autres cultures, enfin en tous les cas que l'aquaculture, et qu'on peut très bien aussi, il y a deux moissons. Hein, il y a la moisson du printemps et la moisson de l'automne pour les algues. Donc là aussi, beaucoup de perspectives. Et comme on en parlait tout à l'heure, je pense que j'aimerais avoir 20 ans parce que je pense qu'on va pouvoir écrire aussi une autre cuisine de la mer qui va être totalement passionnante.
One additional comment on that is that, in fact, it is true that we didn't discuss so much about algae, but the way we structured the Congress is very clear. We took the issues that were going to be discussed at the UNOC. Climate change is to be discussed at the UNOC. Biodiversity protection is to be discussed at the UNOC. Decarbonization of maritime transport is to be discussed at the UNOC. Illegal fishing is to be discussed there. So we took these. We anticipated that these issues would be discussed, and we structured the Congress so that the science would feed what would be discussed at the UNOC. And this is also a way to answer your question, the first question that was asked about whether we were optimistic or not. Somehow we said, but this is what Jean-Pierre read in the first sentence, we want science to be heard at the UNOC, and so we chose that these issues that needed somehow a scientific input immediately, because we knew that they would be on the agenda. And so we are not backing down. We are strongly supporting what we are saying. By the way, I suppose you have been invited, but if not, there is no more room. But I feel tonight we will give a sort of a special event, evening event at Opéra de Nice. And I think when we decided to have that event, which is a sort of science and art, science and music event, we did it because we feel that there is a need not only to speak rationally, but also to speak to the people, to speak to with the means of the culture, with the means of the heart, so that our message is strongly conveyed. So this is also an answer to your question. I don't know whether we have to be optimistic or pessimistic, but we would definitely want to use all the means that we have to convey our message.
Okay, thank you. I think we now need to close for questions as the room is going to close. But we will, if you do have any further questions, please do contact the contact details that are in the press release and have been shared with you, and we will look to answer those following the press conference today. And yes, can I ask for thank you to all of the speakers, thank you for your time, and thank you all as well for attending.